All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. It is Friday, February 6th. Appreciate everybody out there making us a part of your day. The snow is coming down here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Not sure how much longer this is supposed to continue. The temperature is a little bit warmer, so I guess that's nice. But the fact that the snow is coming down, that's not great. The roads are pretty much covered up here in Hamilton, Ohio. But we're here. We are live, and appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Final day of the week here on a Friday. Lots of stuff that we need to discuss. The Super Bowl is in a couple days, so this is the last time we get to preview a football game, which is kind of sad, certainly, but we'll regroup. We'll talk draft. We'll talk free agency. And before we know it, it'll be Cincinnati Reds opening day. And before we know it, the Bengals will be back, and we'll be talking about them there as well. But lots that I want to discuss. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We broke down our top 10 players in the game yesterday, and we're going to do kind of a full preview of the game here on today's show. Some Cincinnati Bengals conversation there as well. Dax Hill, DJ Turner, we've talked about this a couple of times, but some extension candidates for the Cincinnati Bengals include, of course, both Dax Hill, DJ Turner, and Chase Brown. And believe it or not, if I'm ranking the priorities for the Cincinnati Bengals, I would say Dax Hill is probably the first guy that I would extend, and then Chase Brown, and then DJ Turner. And I think a lot of people would say DJ Turner is the number one guy they want to extend. I have some reasons why. A lot of it has to do with money and salary cap. So we'll talk about Dax. We'll talk about DJ, maybe a little bit about Chase Brown there as well. Additionally, we'll talk NFL honors. That was last night. Matthew Stafford is the MVP of the National Football League, and he's going to be coming back, which I think certainly is a good thing. I've said this a couple of times on the show. After the Super Bowl in 21, I was a little salty there for a while, and I was a little anti-Matt Stafford, but I'm back on the Matt Stafford train. What he was able to do in that game against Seattle in which they lost, people aren't going to talk about it for long. People aren't going to remember it very long either, just because that's kind of the nature of it when you lose a big game like that. But I thought Stafford was unbelievable on the road in Seattle. Clearly still has a lot left to offer, and I think that's good for the National Football League and good for the quarterback position that he's going to be back next year for the Los Angeles Rams. Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. How about these recent awards for the Cleveland Browns? Let's pull this up here. Pretty staggering. The Defensive Player of the Year, this is all in the past 3 seasons. They've had the Defensive Player of the Year twice, Myles Garrett, of course. The Defensive Rookie of the Year, Schlesinger this year. Coach of the Year, Stefanski, he's won that a couple of times. Assistant Coach of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Flacco, of course, as well. You would think they would be a pretty good football team then, right, with all those awards? Yeah, no, still the Cleveland Browns. So it's always fun to take a second. Here in Cincinnati, we got our own issues, right? We're salty about the Bengals. We understand that, but I think it's always appropriate just to take a second and laugh at the Cleveland Browns whenever we get the opportunity to do so. Speaking of laughing, Wes Miller, yikes. Keegan Nicholson wrote this in his piece after the game. He said the kind of feeling was, I knew it was bad, but never thought it would get here. And I relate to that a lot. Watching that game last night, Cincinnati had full control of the game. Going into halftime, extended the lead to, I think, 14 at one point, a couple of minutes into the second half. But it became very clear once Huff started cooking for West Virginia that Cincinnati was going to lose this game. Sure enough, that 14, 15-point lead shrinks to 1. Next thing you know, they're losing with a couple minutes left, and that was all she wrote. I understand they got some injuries, things they're dealing with, but my goodness, if there was a chance in heck for Wes Miller to go on some run, hang on to his job, like there's a favorable stretch here. Talking about the Big 12, where they're at in the schedule right now. I mean, West Virginia, yeah, they're better than UC, but it's not, a great team by any stretch. You got UCF, who you lost to, but they're a very winnable. That's a very winnable game, and then Utah. So the schedule here is kind of going in Cincinnati's way, but they weren't able to take advantage of it. And then another moment with Wes after the game, talking to fans about, you have the right to be frustrated. It's just, look, when you're in a spot like this for Wes, I don't know if he's in a position where he can open his mouth and it's not bad, right? And people are like, okay, yeah, that's well said, right? He's just in a very difficult spot, but it seems like I didn't think he was in a spot where he could dig this hole any deeper. It seems like he's managing to do that. And again, by all accounts, he clearly wants to win. He clearly works hard. A lot of us were excited there at the beginning stages of his tenure. Even going into this year, there was a lot of optimism when you looked at the roster, but It couldn't be more apparent that they need a revamp from a leadership perspective, and it's only a matter of time before that gets done. But 8 games still left. Like, this thing isn't over yet. 8 games and then a conference tournament before this thing is all said and done. But we'll talk about that game a little bit there as well, and maybe if we have some time, we'll touch on some Cincinnati Reds prospects. Some rankings came out, usual suspects there at the top of the list. But we do have a couple of players. Eugenio Suarez is going to play in the World Baseball Classic, as is Edwin Arroyo. Arroyo is kind of a sneaky name, I think. He, of course, was a top-of-the-line prospect, and then he had an injury that cost him a whole season. And, I don't know if his status or, trajectory has cooled off a little bit since that injury, but I think a lot of people expect him to be a good player. He certainly can pick it. And he's an interesting guy where if he's, humming along and Matt McClain's struggling, or you lose some depth there if somebody gets hurt, could be a potential guy. That's not going to make the roster on opening day, but could get pulled up at some point throughout the season. So we'll talk about that a little bit there on the show as well. But as always, appreciate everyone for being here. Like the stream. If you haven't done so already, hit that thumbs up icon for us. Subscribe to the channel and leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Podcasts go out in the afternoon each and every day. And if you can't watch live on YouTube, totally get it. You can find the audio version wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. Find the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. That really does go a long way. All right, so let's dive in here to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 60, rematch of, 10, 11 years ago, something like that, the Seahawks and the Patriots. And pretty impressive, really, that these two organizations are back in this game, considering all the change that has happened. Obviously, it's been a long time, over a decade, so the players aren't the same. But guess what? The coaches aren't the same either, right? Obviously, Bob Kraft, the owner for the Patriots, he's in place, and John Schneider, the GM for the Seahawks, he's in place, but wholesale changes everywhere else. And I think those guys deserve a ton of credit, right? Bob Kraft, the Apple documentary came out where he's basically bashing Bill Belichick is kind of what it felt like in that docuseries, which he didn't need to do that. That was unnecessary. But what he's been able to accomplish as an owner is pretty impressive. Did he land Tom Brady? Is that a diamond in the rough guy? And lots of people would say the greatest football player of all time. Yes. But to get back to this point where they're at right now, back in the Super Bowl, he deserves a ton of credit. And what did he do? Right? They had Gerard Mayo for 1 year as the head coach in New England. Obviously, it kind of went sideways. They beat the Bengals, of course. But they went 4-13, and he understood that there was another coach available on the market that was going to be a better fit. And obviously, both guys, Vrabel and Mayo, had Patriot ties, right? So I'm sure it was not an easy decision to fire him. And I've never really been a fan of the one and done anyway in the NFL. I think that's kind of unrealistic. But credit to him, makes the move, understood that there was a better coach out there, and boom, right back in the Super Bowl after that. So Bob Kraft deserves a ton of credit. His leadership, has he been in the media for some weird reasons in the past? Yes. But as far as building an organization, being a leader, and doing it over a sustained period of time, pretty impressive what he's been able to accomplish. And then John Schneider as well. I've been banging the table for John Schneider forever, and it seems like people nationally are finally starting to wake up to this a little bit more. But what he was able to build in Seattle, again, this isn't the Dallas Cowboys or the Green Bay Packers or the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, this isn't some huge brand. This is just some team up in the rainy Pacific Northwest that he's been a part of for a really long time and has built some really, really good rosters. And doing it with multiple head coaches and multiple quarterbacks kind of shows the genius of a GM, right? I think that's part of the reason why Howie Roseman gets so much credit. Yeah, we see him wheeling and dealing at the trade deadline and off seasons and being aggressive and making trades. But part of the reason he's so highly respected is that he's won 2 Super Bowls with different quarterbacks and different head coaches. And John Schneider has the opportunity to do that as well here in Seattle, and we talked about the move at the trade deadline. We're going to talk about this a little bit more as we break down the game, but I tweeted it out, and I said it here when we were doing our deadline show. That Shaheed move, the best move anyone made, and it was really the best move anyone could make, right? And it's not like he gave up a day one or a day 2 draft pick in order to get him. Right? There was a 4th-round pick, maybe a 5th-round pick to get Shaheed, and he completely has changed the trajectory of their offense, giving them that over-the-top threat, which, of course, JSN has, but to have just a pure speedster certainly helps. And then what he's been able to do from a special teams perspective as well. Right? The reason the Rams lost that game in the NFC Championship was special teams. And credit to the Seattle Seahawks for being really buttoned up in that department, and I give Mike McDonald a lot of credit for that. So let's talk about the game a little bit. Before we do that, I want to mention Tom Brady. Because Tom Brady came out, and this is making some headlines here. Obviously, whenever Tom Brady speaks, it typically does make a headline. But he came out and was like, yeah, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm hoping for a really good game. Come on. Are you serious? Right? If the Raiders were playing in this game and you want to say that, sure. But come on. You played there for 20 years. They just built a statue for you and honored you and have basically done everything you possibly could have wanted. And from a Patriot perspective, the fan base defended you throughout your scandals, right? With Deflategate and Spygate. They were there for you. And were they a little bit frustrated when you left for Tampa? I'm sure. But what I've gathered, it seemed like most Patriots fans were pulling for the Buccaneers in that Super Bowl, hoping Tom Brady would get another one. Right? And to say that, oh, I don't have a dog in this fight, I just want a good game. Like, you're not calling the game, man. Right? If this was at Fox and you were calling it like last year, sure. If this was the Raiders playing, sure. Right? But I thought, I mean, come on. Right? And some of his teammates, Vince Wilfork and others, have called him out for it. If I was a Patriots fan, I probably would be a little upset / frustrated. Like, come on. Like, what are you doing? Just say you're pulling for the Patriots here in this spot. You were there for 20-plus years, accomplished so much. That organization has done so much for you and your family. The least you could say is, you don't have to say, like, oh, yeah, I'm showing up in a Drake May jersey. Let's go, Pats. No, just be like, it would mean a lot to the people of Foxborough and the people of New England to get another Super Bowl. I know what the standard is there. I've been a part of it for a long time. I know how excited the city will be. Drake May seems like a great kid. I'm rooting for him. Braves is a former teammate. Obviously, I'm pulling for New England, but would love to see a good game there as well. That's all you have to say if you're Tom Brady. But for whatever reason, that's not the route he opted to take. When you're breaking down this game, the spread's 4.5. To me, that seems a little much. Honestly, that's what the spread was in the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl. The Bengals obviously lost, but covered the spread. My pick in this game, I'll just go ahead and say it now. I do think the Patriots will cover. I did have a future on New England before the postseason started, so I'm kind of riding that. I got it like plus 900, and what are they, plus 190 to win this game, so you feel good about that a little bit. I've been on the Patriots all year. I think like week 5 or 6 is when I started to fully hop on the bandwagon and be like, this isn't some cute little story of, Mike Vrabel comes back to New England and they got this quarterback in Drake May who, is in love with his high school sweetheart and married her, and it's this great feel-good story. Now, this is a real football team, right? All those things are true, but this is a real football team. I've been on it for a while, and I think they're going to compete in this game. I think there's some notion out there that Seattle might blow them out. I really don't see that happening. I don't see Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels going into a Super Bowl and getting blown out, right? And I think that is where the advantage lies for New England is coaching. Right, we talked about it on the show yesterday. Josh McDaniels, this is his 10th Super Bowl that he has been a part of. He's been a part of 9. The guy's not even 50 years of age. Pretty unbelievable. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck? What are you talking about? No, he wasn't there for the beginning. He wasn't the offensive coordinator for the beginning of those Brady years, but he was on the staff. Right, he was a personnel assistant and then worked his way to eventually being a quarterback coach, right? And then obviously left for Denver, came back, was there for like 8-9 years, whatever, left again, came back again. So the experience from McDaniels from a play calling perspective and just knowing how to handle this game, right, is huge. You have the 2 weeks off. You have the long halftime. There's this hoopla of Radio Row. I love the Super Bowl, but there are definitely elements to the Super Bowl where it doesn't just feel like football, right? And Joe Burrow talked about this when the Bengals played in the Super Bowl. He was like, yeah, it didn't really feel like a real NFL environment. It felt like we were at some rich, exclusive dinner party, and we were the entertainment, right? So it's kind of a different vibe, and there's different hoops that you have to jump through, and there's media outlets you got to talk to from all over the world, right? It's not just New England media and Seattle media. It's not just American media. It's people come in from everywhere. It is this huge, massive event, and it's got to be a lot to deal with. Like, if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm sitting here like, what in the world is going on? Like, I was fighting for my job. I was a backup, and I'm in the Super Bowl, and I'm the favorite to win Super Bowl MVP, and I got 1 million cameras in my face. People following me around. Obviously, that's kind of how it's been building up to that for him throughout the year. But from a preparation perspective, I think that advantage is pretty clearly with the New England Patriots because they've all been here from McDaniels and Vrabel, and they can pass that experience along to their players. Bob Kraft obviously has dealt with this a million times there as well, their owner, and I think that's really going to put them in a good spot. Also, from a game planning perspective, why was Bill Belichick so good in the Super Bowl? Because he had 2 weeks to prepare. Why was Tom Brady so good in the Super Bowl? Because he had 2 weeks to prepare. That's huge. And I'm sure Mike McDonald is dialing up some crazy stuff defensively, but you best believe that game plan for Josh McDaniels is dialed in, and I think the coaching advantage pretty significantly is on New England's side. And there's a lot of elements to Vrabel that he got from Belichick, right? One of the things that you always saw from Belichick, especially in these big games, was like, oh, this guy understands the rule book better than anybody. Right? Maybe even better than the officials, which would be a problem, obviously. But I think Vrabel has some of those same tendencies, right? He's going to have some disguises. He's going to have some tricks up his sleeves. He's going to find that loophole that can give New England an advantage. There's some Belichickian elements to what Vrabel does as a head coach. And you heard Sean Payton talk about this in the AFC Championship game. The play in the first or second quarter where they went for it on fourth down, and when the weather hit in the second half, that play ultimately swung the game on its head. Sean Payton was saying after the game, he's like, we lined up and we loved the look from the defense, so we ran the play. The only issue was they completely switched at the snap of the football. Yeah, that's some Belichick stuff. Vrabel's going to have that up his sleeve. This is not going to be easy for Sam Darnold. So part of the reason why, or basically the main reason why I like New England so much is the experience of McDaniels and Vrabel, and they've been there. They've done that. And Mike McDonald is awesome. He really is. He's the next superstar head coach. But I still think pretty clearly in my eyes, the coaching advantage lies with New England in this game. And also, McDaniels isn't going anywhere, right? Vrabel's not going anywhere. Clint Kubiak is going to Vegas. We all know this. And there's been many coaches that have coached in this game that are going elsewhere after the game in the past that have still had success, right? I'm not saying necessarily that it's going to cost Seattle in this game. But also, he's a human being. He's a little bit distracted here. Has he spent 100% of his time worried about this game? No. There is a part of his brain that is thinking about Vegas and what to do when he gets there and what he's going to say at his press conference and who he's going to hire, right? So that's a distraction, right? Is it going to impact Seattle in this game? That remains to be seen, but that is a distraction. That is a very real thing. On the field, right, the quarterbacks in this game, Drake May and Sam Darnold. Look, Sam Darnold, what he has gone through to get to this point is unbelievable. I mean, he was always kind of a raw guy coming out of USC. Like, it's not like he played elite football at USC. It was like, oh, this guy's 6'5", and he has a huge arm, and he can move. Take him in the top 5. And I don't think it was a bad decision by the Jets to do it, clearly. But, he had some ups and downs. The teams that he played for were the Jets and the Panthers, right? I mean, those are like the 2 worst organizations in football. Throw the Cleveland Browns certainly in there as well. But, he didn't really have much of a chance. And then he goes to San Francisco with Shanahan, which is arguably the best spot to be in football, is the backup for Brock Purdy, gets a little bit of time there, gets O'Connell's attention there in Minnesota, goes to Minnesota, balls out here in Seattle, doing the same. The rest is history. So, by all accounts, seems like a good guy. Like, he's had multiple opportunities this week to, bash the New York Jets. And I think as a human being, that would be kind of tempting, right? Especially when you're sitting there at the Super Bowl and this team just cast you aside like you were a piece of garbage despite picking you so high and didn't really give you any help. It'd be easy to do that. But he's clearly a high-character guy, strong values, and everybody really clearly likes him. You've never heard anyone say anything bad about Sam Darnold. So it's kind of hard not to root for him. And, if he caps this thing off with a Lombardi trophy, what a turnaround that would be. Because I'm still hesitant to crown him. I know some people are like, after he plays like that in the NFC Championship, you got to crown him. I still want to see it one more time before I fully give him his flowers, right? There's still, for whatever reason, something in the back of my mind where it's like, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. And I think there's this notion out there that he was perfect against the Rams. He was really, really good. But I still firmly believe that his counterpart was better, Matthew Stafford. But obviously Seattle won the game. So I need to see it one more time. I need to see him ultimately get it done in this game, and then you go on from there, and you got to say, you know what, he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. And Cooper Kupp was talking about this a little bit there as well. He just needed to be in a spot where he had the right fit because he's got the athleticism, he's got the size, and he's got the arm strength. And Cooper Kupp was saying he's got the preparation. It's all he cares about. He's all in, attention to detail. He just needed to be in the right fit. And clearly what Kubiak has been able to do, what O'Connell did with him last year, playing to his strengths, get him under center, run the play action, bootleg him out, use his athleticism, throw the ball down the field, get it to, JSN, who's an unbelievable player. They can run the ball. It's just a complete football team. Seattle's a complete operation. Head coach, check. GM, check. Defense, double check. Quarterback, check. Skill guys, check. Run game, check. It's a complete operation, and that's why they're ultimately playing in this game. Drake May on the other side. We talked about this yesterday. For Drake May, it's different because Sam Darnold can go out there, manage the game, not turn it over, and that'll be good enough, potentially, for Seattle to win. I don't see a world where New England can win without Drake May playing really well. You could argue he's due for a good performance. The weather certainly has impacted New England throughout the postseason, which that's going to be the case for as long as they make the playoffs, right? Like we've seen it with Tom Brady. If you're playing in Boston this time of year, it ain't going to be pretty outside. We all understand this. But, he didn't have to do much, just manage the game against the Chargers. That's what he did. Their defense was balling. Herbert and company couldn't move the ball. Houston, they got out to an early start, made a couple of good throws early in that game, and then C.J. Stroud just kept shooting himself in the foot, self-sabotaged, and they were able to hang on despite the fact that May obviously put the ball on the ground multiple times in that game. And then Denver, it didn't look good there for a while, but then the weather hit and they had the lead, so it was like, we can kind of just run the ball, sit on it, play defense, and go from there. That's not the recipe here in San Francisco. I haven't checked the weather, but I assume, Bay Area, weather's not going to be a factor. He's going to have to go out there and play good football, which he's capable of, right? And there's some people that just watched New England in the postseason that are like, Drake May, what are you talking about? He's not going to play well, or he hasn't been playing well. Why should we believe he's going to play well? He almost won the MVP last night, which shows you how good he was in the regular season. I was shocked that it was that close. As far as first place votes go, Stafford got several more just votes in general, but he only got one more first place vote than Drake May. It was like the closest MVP since 2003 or something absurd, which is crazy to me. I did not think that Drake May would come that close to winning, but it shows you how good he was. Right. By the way, somebody voted for Justin Herbert to win it. I wonder if that was the same guy that kept Belichick out or whatever the case was there. But that was I like Justin Herbert a lot. But what, an MVP vote? Are we serious here? But this isn't. It's year two, right, for Drake May. It's kind of what it was, or it is what it was for Joe Burrow. You would think that they're going to be back in this game again after tonight or after Sunday night. But there's no guarantees. It is so hard to get to this spot. Dan Marino got to the Super Bowl as a rookie, never got back. Joe Burrow got there in his second year, and I don't think I'm just being biased when I say I think a lot of us fully expected him to be back by now. Hasn't been back. So, he's going to have opportunities. If he stays healthy, he's going to have a lot more years ahead of him. But there's something about being able to capitalize when you have the chance. It is so hard to get to this spot. You need so many things to go your way from a health perspective. The ball's got to bounce your way. You got to get some fortuitous calls, right, throughout the course of a season, throughout the course of the playoffs to get to this point. And then you got to go out there and do it one more time on the biggest stage in front of the whole world. So I think he's made of all the right stuff. I expect him to play well in this game. If he doesn't, if he turns it over 3 times, wraps, over, no chance. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think McDaniels is going to put together a nice game plan. I think they're going to get him on the move a little bit. They're going to obviously try to run the ball with Henderson and Stevenson. They're going to work to Stephon Diggs over the middle. They're going to take some shots to Booty downfield. And if he can just settle into the game and get that confidence going, kind of like what we saw from Brock Purdy a couple of years ago against the Niners, where it's like they didn't just turn around and hand it off to start the game. Yeah, they wanted to run the ball with McCaffrey, but they gave him some easy throws. They let him play quarterback, settle into the game, and then he didn't really miss a beat. And Purdy was outstanding in that game. Obviously, the Chiefs ended up winning, but that's kind of how I expect May to play. I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him. The weather's going to be favorable, which is going to be really nice for him, considering all the crap he's had to deal with the previous few weeks. But quarterback play, obviously, is what goes a long way in the Super Bowl, and these two guys are the favorites to win Super Bowl MVP, obviously. Obviously, Sam Darnold is going to be the favorite for Super Bowl MVP because he's the quarterback on the team that's favored, right? So as far as betting on one of those two guys to win Super Bowl MVP, I don't think the odds are good enough, but I do like New England plus 4.5 in this spot. Defensively, this Seahawks defense is obviously really, really good. I don't think they're as good as the Houston defense, and they play a lot different as well. Houston is so predicated on Will Anderson getting home to the quarterback, Daniil Hunter getting home to the quarterback, even Sheldon Rankins getting home to the quarterback. That's not really Seattle's approach, right? They're big and they're tough and they're physical, but I think they were like 10th in the league in sacks. That's going to be a huge matchup to watch, though, in the trenches. And DeMarcus Lawrence, what he's been able to do coming over from the Dallas Cowboys, an incredible year that he has had. Talked about this yesterday. Like, I did not expect him to be in this spot where he would play this well. Honestly, really surprised me. I thought, I didn't necessarily think he was washed, but to be like a focal point on the best defense or top 2 defense in the NFL playing in the Super Bowl, pretty impressive. But 2 rookies on the offensive line for the Patriots, and Will Campbell, he's a top 5, right, pick. And he played well early in the year, but it's been a real struggle here in the postseason. McDaniels, when he's scheming up plays, they need to get Campbell some help over there on that left side, and one of their guards is a rookie there as well. So how those guys play in this game is going to be critical because there's youth all over, right, for New England. You got 2 of your starting offensive linemen are rookies. Your quarterback's a second-year guy, and your second running back, or 1B, whatever you want to say, 1A, is a rookie as well in Henderson. So a lot of youth, and it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that early on because they're going to get ambushed potentially here out the gate. Like, that's kind of what happened to L.A., but they got Matthew Stafford, so they were fine. As far as, Kenneth Walker running the ball, Seattle scoring early in the first quarter. If that happens to New England and they got their backs against the wall immediately, that's going to be tough. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this is kind of one of those games, if you're the Patriots, I hate to say this in a Super Bowl, but I think you consider taking the ball first just to try to create some momentum for yourself. Now, it would be very difficult for me to do that. I think in a Super Bowl, the final game, like, I want the ball to start the second half. But I think that's something you consider if you're New England, getting the ball first and just trying to go down and score some points early just to kind of ease into the game. That way it's not like, oh, shoot, we're down 7-0 here immediately. We got to go. I don't know. I think there's some advantages there for that. From a coverage perspective, if you're New England, how are you going to slow down those playmakers? Because they're going to try to run it with Kenneth Walker, and they're going to try to open up the play action off that, and you're going to have to guard somewhere. Somebody's going to have to lock somebody up one-on-one. We talked about this as well. What do you do with JSN, right? To me, like, there's a couple guys in this league, Jamar Chase certainly one of them, where it's like he's going to get his, right? You're not just going to be able to eliminate him. Do you trust Gonzalez against him one-on-one? Clearly he's your best option. Or do you double-team him all game? I don't know. But Cooper Kupp, I expect him to have some big plays as well over the middle, third down. Look for him. Shaheed, they're going to try to hit a bomb to him at some point. So how they match up against these receivers is going to be critical because we talked about this with Bill Belichick. He always wanted to take away your best option, right? What you were really, really good at, he was like, you're not going to beat us with that. Is that the approach Vrabel's going to take with JSN? Or are they just going to double-team him all game, maybe use Gonzalez on him and let other guys beat him? I don't know, but that's going to be a huge matchup to watch in this game. Also, special teams. Big reason why both these teams are here in this game. I think for whatever reason, special teams doesn't get valued enough. For example, look at Sean McVay and the Rams. Despite all the success that they've had, their special teams has been pretty bad for much of this run. And I feel like you kind of see that with offensive coaches where they don't prioritize special teams as much as some of these defensive guys. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. It's a great example. They've really struggled on special teams. So, Seattle, on the other hand, has not. Belichick and Brady, those teams, they never struggled on special teams. They always were buttoned up there. So both these teams are good on special teams. Don't be surprised if a big return swings this game. That ended up happening in one of when when Kansas City beat Philadelphia. Remember the return? Was it Tony that returned it and then set up the easy touchdown for Kansas City? But that was ultimately what won them the game. I think that could very well be the case here with either Marcus Jones for New England or Shaheed. The punters are going to be critical. Are you going to punt the ball to them? Are you going to punt it out of bounds? How are you going to keep the ball out of their hands? That's going to be critical there as well. But special teams in this game is not one where you go up and get some chicken wings or go get you a little appetizer. You better be locked in because something crazy might happen on special teams in this football game. And New England also offensively, I think this is a big game for the tight ends. I think Hunter Henry needs to have some success here in this game because Drake May has said, and he's shown it all year, if they give him one-on-one, he's going to take a shot, right? But I also think he needs to take completions when they're there, right? Not be overly aggressive. Hunter Henry, there's going to be opportunities, especially when Seattle blitzes, to get the ball to him, right? I like some Hunter Henry props in this game as far as catches and yards, right? I see them hitting like a seam shot to him there as well, so I think the tight ends in this game are critical for New England additionally. And stop on the run defensively for the New England Patriots. Kenneth Walker, I mean, there's a world where they can just turn around, hand the ball off, play defense, and Sam Darnold doesn't have to do much, bleed clock. And as a fan, I hope that doesn't happen because I want to see these quarterbacks, get tested and have to make some big-time throws. But there's a way in which Seattle can win that way, and that matchup's going to be fascinating because they ain't going against the Bengals defensive line. Barmore, Milton Williams, they're the real deal, and this Patriots defense is number one against the run this year. So if they struggle to run it with Kenneth Walker, get your popcorn out because then Sam Darnold is going to have to play quarterback. He had to in the NFC title game, and he was great, and they won. Can he do it again against New England? That remains to be seen. I'll take the plus 4.5. I think New England wins. Obviously, they're the underdog, so it's kind of a bold take, but I've been on them all year. I think coaching perspective, there's a significant advantage for them. And I think Drake May is going to outplay Sam Darnold in this game. And from a special teams defense, I just trust them a little bit more. And they've been in this spot as an organization multiple times. And I'll take the New England Patriots to win this game, cover the spread. I do still think there's value on JSN MVP, right? I know I just picked New England to win, and obviously he's not going to win MVP if New England wins. But I could see, Sam Darnold having a solid game and a Seahawk win, but basically all the targets and catches go to JSN, and they would give it to him over Sam Darnold. But I do think there's value in JSN, who has proven that he is a big game player, and he was their offense against the Rams. It was run it with Kenneth Walker and throw it to JSN, and that worked. And wouldn't surprise me if it worked again in the Super Bowl. All right, let's talk Cincinnati Bengals a little bit here on the show. Obviously, lots of decisions that Cincinnati needs to make this offseason as it relates to extension guys, free agent signings, what to do in the draft. We know this. We've been talking about it for a while. And there's 3 extension targets that kind of stick out to me. Chase Brown, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner. And I've come out and I said I think they need to extend Chase Brown. I thought about it for a little bit, but when you have a guy that's that good and just kind of watching back some of the games, just the speed that he has, as well as how complete of a player he is, from a pass blocking perspective, that has significantly improved since his rookie year. Out of the backfield, he's been sure-handed for the most part. Had a couple of drops, but he's a sure-handed guy. You get it to him out in the flat. He can run. He can make guys miss. I've just been so impressed with him. And you could sit here and say that, hey, you can find another Chase Brown in the draft. You could, but you drafted Taj Brooks, and he didn't have much of a role. But is this a position where you feel like he's going to break out this coming year? I didn't see that in Taj Brooks. So you have a guy that you can win with, and a guy that clearly has good rapport with Joe Burrow and the rest of that offense. I would get out of ahead of it and extend him, right? If you make him play this year and then he plays like he did the past couple of years, the number goes up significantly. And I think Chase Brown's a winner, and I think he wants to win in Cincinnati and believes they can win in Cincinnati. And as a running back, this is your chance to get your money. So I don't know if it would be the smartest move financially for him to do it, but I think he wants to be here, and I think he would take a little bit less to stay here and get this extension out of the way right here, right now, so he doesn't have to deal with it. And on Cincinnati's side, I think that's the right thing to do, right? It's not going to hurt you against the cap this year, like $2 million extra if you extend him, something like that. And I just think that you need to make a habit of keeping your good players in-house and rewarding them. And we'll talk about Turner in a second, but Turner's been good for 1 year. Chase Brown's been good ever since he got here. And is that position a plug and play? Maybe, but I don't know. I think you want Chase Brown to be here for the long term, especially with T and Jamar in their prime. Like those 4 guys offensively, Brown, Burrow, Chase, Jamar, or Chase and T. I think you want to build around those guys going forward. And from an injury perspective, he's been very available too. With that running back spot, to be able to play and be as effective throughout the course of a season is really, really impressive. And I just, why mess it up, right? Just get out ahead of it. Give him the extension. Would he take $10 million? I think if it's $10 million, yeah. Now, if it's 12, then you're up in that Joe Mixon contract area, and you got some concerns there. But $10 million, get out ahead of it, reward him. Don't make it a big fuss, right? And keep all your pieces happy offensively and ready to go into next year. Now, Dax and DJ. I think it's safe to say that DJ Turner had a better year. I think Dax Hill, there's some people that get frustrated with him. Did he miss some tackles? Yeah. Was he perfect? No. He can be a starter on a team that wins the Super Bowl. I think that, to me, is pretty clear. They've asked him to do a lot, right? Remember, he came in as a safety, and it was like, well, let's try him at nickel. Let's move him outside. And they're going to continue. Like, when guys get hurt, they're going to ask him to move around. But he found a home there on the boundary, and he's a really good boundary corner in this league. But the reason why I think they need to extend Dax, now there's a world where it's like, extend all three of these guys, right? I don't think any of us would complain if that was the case. But the Bengals picked up his fifth-year option. And how that works is that cap hit is not spread out over a period of time. It is 12.6 against your cap, boom, right here, right now. Because it's, the fifth-year option is essentially a one-year deal with a $12.6 million cap hit for the Cincinnati Bengals with Dax Hill. If you extend him, then you can spread out that cap hit, right? Kind of spread it out over a few years, bring that number down, and that, of course, allows you to do a couple of things. One, potentially extend DJ Turner, or bring in some players from the outside. So if it's a situation for Cincinnati where you're in a spot where it's like, yeah, we picked up his option, but we don't want him to be a part of this defense beyond 2026, then you just take the cap hit and then you part ways with him after this year. I don't think that's the case, right? And you can't really afford for that to be the case because you got so many holes all over your defense. And one thing that you have is Dax Hill. So I would extend him now, open up some more cap space for this offseason, because he's going to be a part of this team longer than just this coming year in 2026, and that opens up some space for you as it relates to the cap. Now, DJ Turner's in a different boat. He's still on his rookie deal, and he was a second-round pick, so there's no fifth-year option with him. Now, if you would extend him, his cap number goes up, not significantly, but again, if you extend Dax, then you got some more room to work with, right? And his cap hit right now on his rookie deal is nothing. And in a perfect world, like I said, you extend all three guys. I think that would catch a lot of us by surprise that the Cincinnati Bengals were capable of doing that this offseason. But I think with DJ Turner, I kind of got to see it again, right? He was outstanding. He was sensational this past year for the Cincinnati Bengals. But this wasn't a Chase Brown situation where there's been some model of consistency throughout the course of his time here as a Bengal, right? Comes in as a rookie, high expectations, second-round pick, and it's like, okay, he's playing a little bit. And then he got in the camp battle a couple years ago with Dax Hill, and this is when Dax was transitioning from safety to corner, and Dax beat him out early. No problem, no controversy, right? And then when he was in the lineup the past couple of years, besides this most recent year, he kind of got benched. A lot of those guys were getting benched for each other because they were playing so bad, right? And CTB, he was getting benched for other guys. They were putting Newton in. Turner was out. Like, these guys were in and out of the lineup. And then something clicked. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was Al Golden. I don't know if his attention to detail, if he was just the healthiest he's ever been. I don't know. But he looked like a totally different player out there for Cincinnati. But I don't think it would be wrong for the Bengals to say, you know what, we need to see you do this again before we pay you top-of-the-line money. Now, if it's not top-of-the-line money, it's just average starting cornerback money, sure, do it. But I have a feeling that's not what it's going to be, considering the production that he had this most recent season. So when you just break it down like that, with the cap issues mainly being the reason for Dax, I've always liked Dax Hill more than others. But, I think it's safe to say DJ had a better year. But with the fifth-year option being at what it's at, the 12.6, you could open up close to $10 million in room if you extend him, right? And then you can use a little bit of that to extend DJ as well. So Dax's number goes significantly down, and then DJ's goes up a little bit. And then the Chase Brown thing to me is just purely performance-based. I'm not thinking about the cap there. I'm thinking about this offense, what they're capable of, what they have proven to be with Joe Burrow out there. And clearly Chase Brown has been a huge part of that. If he had some injury issues, like a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins or a Joe Burrow, I'm not in the same spot, but he's pretty much always available. He plays through stuff. He's got the burst. He's good out of the backfield. He protects. Seems like a good leader. The chip on his shoulder, like, I didn't have a problem with that. Zach came out, remember, after the Bear game, and then Chase Brown was like, one bleep and stop, right? And he kind of voiced some frustration directed at the defense, and Zach came out and was like, yeah, Chase is a high character guy. The emotions are high. I don't expect that to happen again. I didn't think it was the end of the world for Chase Brown to do that. I mean, go back to the season. Go back to where you were mentally. All the games that the Bengals were blowing when they were scoring a ton of points and their defense couldn't get off the stinking field. So I didn't have an issue with that. That, to me, shows me he's wired the right way, and it wasn't an issue with him throughout the rest of the year. So that's purely performance-based for Chase Brown. He's going to get a heck of a lot more expensive if you don't give him the extension. And honestly, if they don't give him an extension this offseason, I think this might be his last year as a Bengal this coming year, right, which is not a good thing for Cincinnati. If Taj Brooks had flashed this year and looked awesome, then it's a little bit different. But he didn't do much. He didn't look like Chase Brown by any stretch when he was out there on the football field. But I think Dax is the guy that you extend. I think he's a really good player. Some people don't believe that's the case. I think he is. Again, he's still kind of getting used to this position. He's versatile. He can line up in different spots. But with the cap hit, picking up his fifth-year option, you need to spread that out over a couple of years rather than taking all the 12.6 right here, right now. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, and then if you're capable of doing 3, get DJ as well. But I need to see it a little bit more with DJ Turner. I think that's fair to say, right? It was an outstanding year last year. But the years before that, let's not forget about him. Let's not forget that he had been an outside corner, and Dax made the transition from safety and just whooped him the first couple of weeks of training camp. Let's not forget that he was benched for Fig Newton, right? That a lot of those guys were benched for each other. So I don't think it'd be the end of the world if Cincinnati was like, let's see it one more time for DJ Turner before we give him that contract. All right, NFL honors here for a second before we talk Wes and Cincinnati. Matthew Stafford wins the MVP. I thought it was pretty clear. The year he had was unbelievable. At this day and age, he feels like one of the last few guys hanging on, right? Obviously, we lost Breeze, who's Hall of Famer, deserves it, right? First year he was eligible and gets it. Just a little tangent here. I don't study the Hall of Fame super closely and know, like, okay, how does it work with, who's able to get in, who's not, who's voting for what. Like, I don't get worked up and all that. There's frustration here in Cincinnati that Ken Anderson's not in the Hall of Fame. Ken Anderson, obviously I did not watch him live. By all accounts, clips I've seen, people talking to people that are Bengals fans, older Bengals fans that have been here forever. My dad loves him. He's a great player. Outstanding player. But, like, are you going to get bent out of shape that Drew Brees is in the Hall of Fame? Right? Ken Anderson's great. And, again, I don't know if they're the same pool or whatever, if they're in different voting spots or how that works. But, like, Drew Brees, like, that's the most underrated player in the history of the NFL, in my opinion. And he is a guy that right when he's up for induction should get in, and he was in, right? Larry Fitzgerald, stud, deserves to get in. Right, Vinatieri, people were making fun of him for being a kicker that gets in. Well, he's the best kicker ever and has hit multiple huge kicks in the postseason and Super Bowls. So I don't get really worked up about that kind of stuff. But, like, Brees getting in, that was correct, and that was great to see. Like, Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he should be in immediately. And he was, and that was good to see for me. But back to some of these other NFL Honors Awards. Stafford said he's coming back. Again, one of those last guys. Like, Rodgers is still playing. It kind of feels like as time goes on, he's going to be back in Pittsburgh. We'll see. But that's good for the league. That game against Seattle was unbelievable, some of the throws that he made. And besides Joe Burrow, I'm just kind of doing this off the top of my head, and Matthew Stafford might be my favorite quarterback to watch. I mean, he's the real deal with some of his throws. The arm still has so much life. The no-lookers, it's all great. And he wins the MVP. Offensive Player of the Year, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I said it yesterday. Hand up, accountability. I knew he was going to be a starter in the NFL, but be a superstar, be one of the best receivers in the league. Didn't see that, and he's got an opportunity to have a heck of a performance in the Super Bowl, be a Super Bowl MVP. I mean, the ceiling's through the roof for him, and he wins the Offensive Player of the Year. Pretty remarkable that he was able to accomplish that. Myles Garrett, we were making fun of Cleveland when we first came on. Best defensive player in my lifetime. and he's on the Cleveland Browns. So, he's been a thorn in the side of the Bengals for a long time and has caused them a lot of issues. But from a winning perspective, hasn't equated to wins. And unfortunately, it's kind of where Cleveland's at. You look at Joe Thomas, one of the best offensive linemen of all time. He doesn't really get talked about much because he was a Cleveland Brown. I hope that's not the case for Myles Garrett because he's such a good player. But, we'll see how that transpires for him. McCaffrey won a couple awards, comeback player of the year. He's one of my favorite players, one of the best running backs of all time. Tough, physical, does it all, catches out of the backfield, blocking, running in between the tackles, bouncing it outside. Guy's an unbelievable football player, future Hall of Famer, comeback player of the year. I don't know if Joe Burrow was eligible or how that works or if he'll be eligible next year. Hopefully he just wins MVP. But, I feel like he was, he had the toe and then he came back. But does that not until next year? Or how would he be qualified for that? I don't know. But McCaffrey, heck of a year. Guy's unbelievable. And he's one of those guys that I would like to see get a ring. He's, played in a couple Super Bowls, obviously. And, if he's playing the Bengals, I don't want him to get a ring. But that's kind of the last thing he's looking for to really cement his legacy. But he's a Hall of Famer regardless. Assistant Coach of the Year, McDaniels. Unbelievable. And I've said it several times on the show. If you're the Patriots and you're a Patriot fan, obviously you want to win the Super Bowl, and it's heartbreaking when you don't, but you got to be really optimistic with where you're at because you're way ahead of schedule here, already in the Super Bowl. And if you lose, nobody's going to kill you and be like, oh, what a choke job. Not many people expect you to win, but your core is not going anywhere. Drake May's not going anywhere. Mike Vrabel's not going anywhere. Josh McDaniels is not going anywhere, right? I mean, some of these teams, and this is, part of the reason people knock on Zach Taylor for well, is he ever going to give up play calling? Well, I mean, the Bengals offense, they score a ton of points, right? And they're going to be able to do that. It's not like they're going to lose Zach Taylor, the play caller, you know what I mean? Whereas some of these other teams, a la the Philadelphia Eagles, they lose their coordinator, and it's like, oh, they're in deep trouble, right? Kellen Moore leaves, Shane Steichen leaves, and it's like, who's going to call our plays? We're not the same team. McDaniels, he's tried being a head coach twice and failed epically both times. I don't think, regardless of how much success New England has, that another team is going to roll the dice on him being a head coach. I just don't see that happening. So those three guys are going to stay for a long time. Assistant Coach of the Year, McDaniels. Hard not to give it to him. McMillan, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Kind of a slow start in Carolina, but puts a really good year together, and they've got some interesting decisions to make. What do you do with Bryce Young? Do you go with him for the foreseeable future? I would say yes if you can get him on a favorable deal, but you can't give him the Tua contract or the Lawrence contract. You got to be smart here. I mean, you could argue you shouldn't even give him the Sam Darnold contract, but just the day and age of these quarterbacks and these contracts, it's crazy. I don't get it. I really don't. Dak Prescott's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and he's getting paid $60 million, and the next two are Allen, Lawrence, and Burrow at $55. Why? Dak Prescott's a really good player. He should not be getting paid more than Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Trevor Lawrence should not be getting paid as much as Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. So I really don't understand that. And Tua's getting $51 million or something absurd, which is crazy. So if you paid him $30 million or $27 million, then heck yeah, sign me up. But he's probably going to find a way to get more money than that. But McMillan wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Was sensational at the end. And maybe they have something cooking a little bit there in Carolina. Got to give them some credit on the year in which they had. Vrabel, Coach of the Year. I was saying that I would give it to Shanahan. I would vote for him if I had a vote, just because all the injuries that they sustained, playing with a backup quarterback, and the success that they still had, winning a playoff game. But Vrabel, very, very deserving here to come in year one in New England, take him from 4-13 to the Super Bowl. Pretty unbelievable what he was able to accomplish. And again, another Cleveland Brown wins an award, Carson Schwarzenegger, Defensive Player of the Year, which I'm looking at that, and those finalists. Nick Amonwori, I know he went in the second round, but we were banging the table last year saying either get him or Starks at 17, and it was crazy to me that he slipped out of the first round. I have no clue how that happened, but Seattle I don't think is in this game without him. And by the way, tweaked his ankle, was limping around the hotel and the practice field for Seattle. He's not going to be 100%, still going to play, but that is a huge storyline that he's a little bit banged up going into the Super Bowl, which you feel terrible for him. I mean, these practices throughout Super Bowl week, there's no way they're super intense, right? It's got to be some freak thing that happened, and yeah, hopefully he's good to go for the game. But that's a huge storyline. But he was a finalist for this award. coulda, shoulda, woulda been a Bengal. And then Xavier Watts, another guy who was taken later. But the safety out of Notre Dame, when the Bengals were picking in the second round, he was right there, and it was like, all right, now's our time to get a safety. We didn't take Starks or Eamon Worry in the first round. Let's take Watts here in the second, and they got Demetrius Knights. Okay, that's not good. And then, of course, James Pierce Jr. was available at 17 overall, and he was sensational for the Atlanta Falcons. So makes you frustrated, disappointed, angry, sad, certainly as well, because I've said this before on the show, where it's like a lot of these executives making these decisions, they typically know more than just your typical fan for the most part. Not the case at the 17 overall selection this past year when the Bengals opted to get Shamar Stewart, and all the guys we were clamoring for were sitting right there and are nominated for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and they're like, we're good. We'll take 4.5 sack guy that's going to create some controversy right when he gets here and act like he's, Lawrence Taylor before he even plays a snap here in Cincinnati, which still gets me fired up each and every day. But, those are the awards. Congrats to Matthew Stafford. Heck of a year. Wes Miller, before we get out of here. Cats lose. Running out of things to say, obviously, for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. And I said this at the top of the show. Keegan Nickerson, in his piece for Bearcat Journal, he had a line in there that said, I knew it was bad, but I never thought it would get here. That's kind of the feeling, right? They're below 500, which is absurd. And I agree, right? It's like, you knew it wasn't good, but to stoop this low, like you couldn't beat West Virginia once, right? You lost to UCF, you lost to Eastern Michigan at home, you lost to Xavier, you lost to Arizona State, who's not very good. Like, it's bad. And they had so many opportunities to win this game. Shorthanded without Cham, we understand that. Bob Miller basically had to play the whole game for Cincinnati, and Wes talked about how they executed the game plan for the much of the game. I mean, to have Huff scoreless for as long as they did, it's unbelievable. But you knew at some point that wasn't going to last, and he started to score, started to shoot the ball, started to facilitate, really open up things offensively for West Virginia. But if you're hanging around 50 points in the Big 12, like, you're not going to win many games, and that seems like what UC is doing. 3 points off the bench. I get Creases coming back from injury, but since then he's been a non-factor for them. Buck Harris, who brings the juice, turns the ball over at an absurd rate and can't even come close to making a jump shot, so he doesn't offer much. Celestine, he's shown he can make some threes, but you don't trust him. Had a horrible air ball where he just missed everything and the ball goes out of bounds at a critical moment of the game. Jizzle James was solid in the game, but they just have no plan, right, offensively, and they don't execute anything, and they don't have enough guys that can just go out and get you buckets, which I guess that's on West for recruiting, which a lot of us love this roster coming in, but as time goes on, it's like, yeah, the coaching's bad and the execution's bad, but maybe the talent's not very good either. And that's kind of where things feel for UC at this point. And the tone of Wes has changed. He was very defensive at first, like, oh, bet against us. We're taking on the world here. And now it's more like, I don't want to say like a lost puppy, but he's kind of realizing what's going on. And he's a little embarrassed by it. He's frustrated. He feels apologetic towards the fans. And they just need this season to end. It's kind of how it felt for the Bengals there when Burrow was out, certainly. It's like this season just needs to end, and we need to get to the offseason and kind of regroup. But unfortunately for Cincinnati, it's not ending anytime soon. Still 8 more games in the conference of the Big 12 and then the Big 12 tournament. So this thing could still get a heck of a lot more ugly than it is. And you're just searching for answers if you're UC. And it's hard to believe that Wes Miller is going to be a part of this going forward. I mean, if you're Cunningham, assuming he's able to keep his job as the AD, you have to make a move, right? I don't love calling for people's jobs, but it's very obvious here, right? It is extremely obvious that they need to change. They tried it. Young guy that, had some experience at a smaller school, come in and lead this program. And there was times where he got a little bit optimistic. There was times where he got you fired up when he was speaking into a microphone. There were times where he had some moments in big games. But few and far between when you look at the Wes Miller tenure. And, he's going to be a coach somewhere else at a smaller school. Maybe he'll get one more crack at this thing. But he's been given plenty of resources. He's had plenty of talent. And has he had some legitimate excuses? Sure, he has. But at the end of the day, it hasn't been close. And it hasn't been, competitive, really. Right? I mean, there's a lot of these games that have not even been competitive, which is a serious, serious issue for Cincinnati. And, again, also, too, I think a couple of weeks ago, we were like, how is this coaching so bad? Like, the talent is there. And as time has gone on, it's like, well, you know what? Maybe the talent really isn't fully flushed out either, which obviously is an issue for Cincinnati there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in. Do you bring in another young guy that's at a smaller school, or do you try something else? The St. Louis coach is obviously the hottest name right now, but there's a world where he gets a much bigger job than Cincinnati. But Cincinnati's a big job, too. And it's a Big 12 job, and it's a proud basketball school, and they've got proud, rich history. And unfortunately, they haven't been able to live up to that for a very long time. But program's not in a good spot. But this day and age of college basketball, you could bring someone in here, he gets some recruits, and boom, you're ready to go right here, right now. It doesn't necessarily have to bake. You don't have to take the Miami of Ohio approach at UC because you're a bigger school, you got more money. You could buy a solid roster, get a coach that knows what the heck he's doing, and win right away. So it's not necessarily something where they got to restart and they're going to stink for 3-4 more years. They could be good next year, but they need some leadership changes there in Clifton because clearly this thing has run its course. And, it's easy to sit here and rip apart everything he says and make fun of him for in the tunnel going up to some of the fans and saying you have the right to be frustrated. I get he's a human too. Like, I'm sure it is impossible for him to sleep at night. I'm sure some of the threats coming his way are just awful. And you feel for him when it comes to that because he is a human being at the end of the day. But there's nothing for him to say, right? And when you get to this low of a point and, it's not like he has Joe Burrow to hang his hat on, right? That's something that has saved Zach Taylor. And it's not like he can be like, oh, we went to the Final Four a couple years ago. Like, he doesn't have that. And, when you don't have stuff to hang your hat on and it gets really, really bad, you typically lose your job. And that's the direction in which things are heading in Cincinnati. They have a chance to, get a better taste in the fan base's mouth, right? So again, it's a favorable stretch here over the next few games. They should be able to pick up some wins. No Chom Hurts. Don't know necessarily what his time frame looks like coming back, but there's going to be opportunity to pick up some wins. If they can, that'll just kind of quell the noise a little bit, but hard to imagine him being back next year. Quickly, before we get out of here, some Reds prospects. ESPN released his prospect rankings for each team going into this year. No surprise, Sal Stewart's at 1. There's some value in Rookie of the Year for Sal Stewart. There really is. Jonathan India, of course, won it a few years ago. It'll be interesting to see how they deploy him. I agree with Tito. You don't want a 22-year-old DH. You want to give him an opportunity to play in the field, right? If you're just going to have him be a DH or have him be a guy that only plays a couple times a week, start him in AAA, right? Don't bring him up here on the big league squad. If he's going to be up here, he needs to be a guy that plays every day and more times than not is playing in the field. And it'll be fascinating to watch his development defensively. He's lost like 20-plus pounds. We were talking to Freddie Benavides on the show. He said he was going down to Miami working with them. So we'll see what he looks like defensively at first base. Could he potentially play second base, right? Is he an option at third if Hayes gets hurt or needs a day off? We'll see. But obviously he's number one, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I know all the guys that are up for Rookie of the Year and can project where those guys are, but I think it's safe to say that there's value in Sal Stewart being the Rookie of the Year because the guy can flat out hit, as Chris Welsh said when he was on the show. Alfredo Duno, I'm really excited to see what he can do, where he's at as far as the minor leagues. He's the number 2 prospect. Could he get all the way up to the show this year? My gut says no, but I guess I really don't know. Maybe he could. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Rhett Lauder, a guy that's exciting. Who's going to be that 5th starter in your rotation? Right? So we know Abbott, Green, Lodolo, and Singer are your 4. Who's going to be that 5th guy? Inevitably, somebody's going to get banged up at some point, and his services are going to be needed at some time this year. But could he beat out Chase Burns in the spring or Brandon Williamson? I don't know. I mean, watching him at Wake, I had a buddy that played against him and was like, this dude's the real deal. So he clearly has a lot of talent. I think a lot of us were hyped when the Reds drafted him. And I think now it's fair to say that, he's been at this thing for a while. Not a while, but we're ready to see something a little bit from Rhett Lauder, and he's going to get an opportunity at some point this year. A couple other names, Steele Hall, Tyson Lewis, Cam Collier. He was kind of bursted on the scene a little bit and then kind of cooled off. Watched him at Dayton last year. I wonder if he's lost some weight. It looked like he could lose a few lbs to help him out a little bit. Hector Rodriguez, Chase Petty, will he get another opportunity? Got a chance last year, and that didn't go well. He was way too fired up, way too emotional, and needed to calm down a little bit. But there's people that believe he can offer some stuff to the big league lineup. And then Edwin Arroyo. Craig Sandlin and Mike Hart did their hot takes live stream where people sent in on Twitter and social media and just YouTube comments some of their hot takes. And I think a lot of people put in the take of Edwin Arroyo might be a part of this team at some point this year. He's not going to make the roster for opening day, but if McLean gets hurt or is really struggling and you need somebody at second base, or certainly if something were to happen to Elliott Short, he's a name to keep an eye on. Coming off a serious injury a couple of years ago, but he was a guy that when the Reds got, everyone was like, oh, this is the real deal here in Edwin Arroyo, and the guy can flat out pick it, and we'll see how his offense develops here, but that's also a guy to keep an eye on here at this point. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everyone. As always, we will be back next week. Keep an eye on the schedule for next week. We've got some stuff going here meeting-wise as we get ready for opening day here at Chatterbox, so some flexibility with our schedule. We'll have a couple of pre-recorded shows that will air at 11 o'clock. It'll be as if we are live here on the show, but we won't technically be live, so be on the lookout for that. We'll try to get a few guests next week as well. We got some busy stuff going on here at Chatterbox, but yeah, we got hopefully a lot of good things coming down the pipe here. And, we're going to continue to pump out daily content, and we appreciate all of your support, certainly, as always. So leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Last football game, which is sad, but Super Bowl Sunday is always a great time. I don't know where you stand on Bad Bunny. I'm not going to bring my comments here to this platform, but he's going to be the halftime show. But hopefully we get a great game. Seahawks, Patriots. Hopefully you spend some time with family, eat some good food, and we will be back to break it down on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.